Hello, my name is Uriel. This is my constructive negative against Dalton's affirmative. I'm going to start by challenging Dalton's stance on the No Child Left Behind Act. First of all, you said there's a lack of emphasis in education today in America, but in a way you kind of contradict yourself because obviously the No Child Left Behind Act disproves your claim because it is an act that is meant to help schools around the world that are failing. So, around the country, excuse me. You also say that schools need to be at some sort of improvement in the AYP or adequate yearly progress testing in order to receive funding, which is also not true. The No Child Left Behind Act helps students and schools in several different ways, not just because they're failing or they're not necessarily reaching that level they should be, they're not going to receive funding. I mean, if a student is failing for whatever reason, that student, according to the No Child Left Behind Act, can be moved to a better school and receive free tutoring if they need to. So, and also, schools can qualify for grants to use towards attracting top-notch teachers or other school programs. I mean, and although the U.S. Department of Education may not have the personnel nor the budget to make sure or enforce that all the nation's public schools comply with the No Child Left Behind Act's complicated regulations, education officials simply state that it comes down to the parents to pressure the schools to give the children the options provided by the federal law. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is if a school is pressured enough by the parents, if the school is pressured enough by the parents, the school is forced to ask for more money from the federal government to fund the failing school. So, I mean, obviously, it's just going to come down to the parents to ask for more money or ask for better teachers or whatever. Now, the No Child Left Behind law also applies that schools that receive Title I money from the federal government, schools that get Title I funds are generally those which are at least 35% of students are from low-income families. So, and more than half of all public schools are Title I schools, which means that the schools are receiving funding one way or another. And this helps these students that are living in like low-income communities. And so, I mean, they are receiving funding. They are. And this also brings me to my next point when you speak about technology and how that if you implement technology into schools, it supposedly it will improve their grades. Now, the one thing, in order to implement new technology into schools today to improve scores, this will require a massive amount of money to pay for these new tools or new technology, whether it be iPads, computers, or anything else. For example, let's look at an iPad. iPad alone can cost up to like $500 or more. Now, multiply that times every student in an average high school. Now multiply the total cost of that cost that would be from all those iPads to the students times every high school in America. And now you can sort of see the idea of how much money that would cost. I don't have a specific, formula for this, but you can just guess that's a lot of money. Now, where would the United States obtain all this money for this technology to be put in schools? And this also brings me to my next point. Prior to this technology into the innovations of today, the U.S. was at the top 5 without the need of all this technology. So how can you say that the lack of technology is the reason that the school system is failing? And the major impact of technology being implemented in schools is not so much that it will help improve scores, but rather the dependence of the students on the technology will increase because they won't actually be able to work out the problems on their own. They're going to depend on these iPads, these computers, to pretty much work out the problems for them. All they have to do is say, oh, well, what is the answer to this question? And all I have to do is type it up, and then it'll show up. So they're not really going to be working out the problems. And especially when it comes to testing, they're not going to retain the information that they need in order to work out the problems on their own. They're always going to look up to the convenience of a computer to answer the question for them, making it harder for them to retain the information. all I'm trying to say in here is that the technology will evolve, and the gap between what can be solved with and without it will only increase. For example, when we were younger, we were taught how to physically work out complex math problems, whether it be using the Pythagorean theorem or other complex formulas, but we were taught how to work them out ourselves. Um, and then after a while, we were introduced to calculator. So, but slowly but surely, rather than working out those problems on our own in our notebooks, we became more dependent on the convenience of the calculator rather than working the problems out ourselves. What would happen if the technology was to just disappear or just stop working? I mean, everyone would completely be lost and completely running around like chickens with their heads cut off. So, what I'm trying to say here is that technology is not necessarily a good thing when it comes to schools, and it's not necessarily going to improve the scores. What it would only do is pretty much make students dependent on that technology. They're not going to be able to work out the problems themselves. Other than that, I see like the best thing that you can do to improve student scores is for the teachers. I will agree on your affirmative that it also comes down to the teachers. I mean, they are pretty much the primary source for these students' learning. So, I mean, if we were to get qualified teachers, very qualified teachers to teach these students, then there wouldn't be a need of technology. There'd just be a need of really good teachers teaching the students the curriculum very well. Thus, they'll be able to work out the problems on their own without the need of this technology. That pretty much concludes what I have to say, and thank you.